Hello, I'm Ian Masters, and I've just gotten through for this week of Background Briefing, my radio program. It's available at ianmasters.com, of course, and let me just give you a summary of the week as I remember it. We started out touching on a couple of stories that have been pushed to the back burner because of Libya and Wisconsin. That is Bahrain, very important. That's where the U.S. Fifth Fleet is. We talked with an independent reporter with the only independent paper, Reem Khalifa. She was clearly nervous, but she did reveal how much the government, pushed by the Saudis, are driving a sectarian wedge through the country by encouraging divisions between the Sunni minority and the Shia majority, and that doesn't look good. Chris Fair, my favorite analyst on Pakistan, Afghanistan, joined us to talk about the CIA contractor Raymond Davis, who's being held by the Pakistanis. It turns out that that's probably a spy versus spy war between the ISI, Pakistan's intelligence, and the CIA. This guy's a pawn, but it does raise larger questions about this terribly dysfunctional relationship that the U.S. has with its so-called ally, Pakistan. We also, on International Women's Day, talked about the state of women with Frances Kissling, former head of Catholics for Free Choice, and on the Republican assault on women, which is bound to get worse. Then we had a very interesting discussion with Marwan Crady at the Annenberg Center on the Arab media, in particular Al Jazeera's apparent double standard, where on the one hand they condemn Mubarak and Gaddafi, but they backpedal when it comes to Bahrain. That's real close to home. And the monarchs in the Gulf are, of course, quaking in their boots, as are the Saudi royals. So that's a story that we have to watch further. But Al Jazeera is doing a great job in its broader sense, but in Al Jazeera Arabic, apparently there's a serious double standard. And then, of course, in terms of our press, we had the author of Poisoning the Press about the growth of scandal. There was this amazing sting by this fellow O'Keefe, who's already stung Acorn and tried to sting Mary Landrieu, the senator in Louisiana. NPR was so appalling in their response. They acted like they were guilty. They didn't separate out the fact that the guy that was stung by O'Keefe was their chief fundraiser, who they fired, and they allowed themselves to be tainted with criticisms of their editorial bias when fundraising and editorial and news and content and journalism are so totally separate, but nevertheless the NPR executives who are afraid of their own shadow and are always looking over their shoulder at the Republicans look like absolute fools. Then we talked about, of course, the final passage of the governor's union-busting bill in Wisconsin with a local reporter there. A lot of anger. There might well be a backlash against the Republicans. A lot of them are going to be recalled, including the governor, in 1 year from now. We also got a broader sense of labor in this country, the diminished 6% down to 6% in the private sector of unions, and the public sector, of course, under assault from the Republicans, who clearly have the intention of taking funds away from the Democrats, who rely very heavily on public sector labor unions for their support. We also had the 60s icon Wavy Gravy in the studio. That was wonderful. He's got a new documentary out about him, and he gave me a clown nose, which I forgot to wear today. But he is, because he became a clown because he gets beaten up at so many anti-war demonstrations in the 60s, he decided that the cops wouldn't beat up somebody that looked like a clown. And then just today, we just got off the air talking about the worst nuclear disaster, which could be the worst nuclear disaster in history. There are 6 nuclear reactors in Japan out of control in various stages of meltdown. It could be a lot worse than Chernobyl. That's a couple of our guests, one formerly with the NRDC, at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the other, Dan Hirsch, with Committee to Bridge the Gap. It is extraordinary to think of the billions that have been spent on nuclear subsidies, subsidizing nuclear power by the U.S. taxpayer, and Obama's asking for billions and billions more. Hopefully this will finally be the death knell for this dangerous, dangerous, dangerous technology. that has the most amazing lobby. They come back from the dead like Lazarus after 3 Mile Island and after Chernobyl. But I think this Japanese disaster will finally put them in the grave before they put us in the grave, frankly. And then finally we talked with Ali Amida and Dirk van der Velde, two leading analysts here in the US, on Libya, about the possibility, terrible as it is, that Gaddafi may win. It looks like he's going to win. The Director of National Intelligence said so on Thursday, that Gaddafi will prevail. We looked at some of the options. If this horrible killer were to murder thousands more of his people and then thumb his nose at the world, but it looks, though, like the Arab League's call for a no-fly zone may reverse that possibility. So we'll be looking into that subject clearly in the next week ahead, along with some of the repercussions from Wisconsin and the general assault on labor and, of course, the assault on women as the Republican Congress feels its oats. So stay tuned and check us out at ianmasters.com. Bye for now.